What does Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, Jennie Kim from the famous girl group Blackpink, Christian Bale, the renowned actor for Batman and American Psycho, and Jackson Wang, a Chinese celebrity who is everywhere on the internet, have in common? If you happen to be familiar with their background, you'll know that they all have one thing in common, and that is they all had a cross-cultural childhood. Now, if we take a look at Google and look up the definition of a third culture kid, you'll get this: a person who has spent a significant part of his or her developmental years outside of the parent's culture. So, does this mean that they're all third culture kids? Not necessarily, and the truth is actually more complicated than that. In fact, most people don't know this, but the definition that I just read out is outdated. But don't worry, because in this video, I'm going to tell you what the new definition is, why it was updated. I'll be analyzing the childhood of Barack Obama, Christian Bale, Jennie Kim, and Jackson Wang so that you can understand exactly what makes a person a third culture kid. Now, you might be wondering, why do I even need to know this? Well, I think you should know because third culture kids are a growing population, and your future children might be third culture kids. If you also had a multicultural upbringing, you might be wondering if you're a third culture kid or not. I promise you that you'll have the answer to that by the end of this video. Before I dive deeper into it, I want to tell a personal story. I had known that I was a third culture kid. Well, at this point, I'm just gonna call it TCK. I had known that I was a TCK ever since I was in 9th grade, but the definition of TCK had always confused me, so I hated it. I actually hated it because it didn't account for the experiences of the people around me, and I thought that the definition was unclear and ambiguous. I didn't pay much attention to the term because I just thought that this concept was kind of outdated, but recently, I decided to pick up the book Third Culture Kids, Growing Up Amongst Worlds, which is actually known to be the Bible for anyone who wants to understand the benefits and challenges of growing up multiculturally. And I have to say it completely blew me away because not only did it acknowledge the limitations of the definition, but it also opened up a new perspective for me. I'm not kidding when I say that this book was life-changing for me as a TCK, and that's why I wanted to make this video, because I know that this knowledge can be life-changing to someone else, so let's get into it. The term third culture kid was first coined by the researchers John and Ruth Useem in the 1950s. They used it to describe the children of American citizens working and living abroad. Let's call these the original third culture kids. The original TCKs consisted of foreign service kids, military brats, corporate brats, and missionary kids. Yes, you guessed it right. The parents of these children worked as foreign service officers, missionaries, and they worked in the military and corporate companies. These kids had to accompany their parents to live abroad because of the parents' job. Why are they called third culture kids though? Let's take a look at this diagram. The first culture refers to the home culture, meaning the passport country of the parents. The second culture refers to the host culture, meaning the country that the family had to move to. The third culture refers to a lifestyle with common experiences shared by others living in a similar way, the others who also live in the in-between worlds due to an internationally mobile lifestyle. Now, let's take a look at the two realities for TCKs that bonds all TCKs. The first reality of a TCK is being raised in a genuinely cross-cultural world, whether it's due to geographic moves or interactions with other people. The second reality is being raised in a highly mobile world, whether it's the TCKs themselves moving abroad or the people around them coming and going. These two realities result in the quintessential TCK experience, the feeling of rootlessness and restlessness, and feeling like they belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time. In 1989, David Pollock then defined third culture kid to be a person who has spent a significant part of his or her developmental year outside of the parent's culture. In 1999, the first edition of the book Third Culture Kid, Growing Up Amongst Worlds, co-authored by David Pollock and Ruth Van Rieken, was published, which popularized the term third culture kid. Okay, let's pause here for a second. You might be thinking, well, I'm still not sure if I'm a third culture kid because I didn't move countries due to my parents' work. But I relate to being raised in a cross-cultural environment and feeling a sense of rootlessness. I don't know if I count as having lived outside of my parents' culture for years. If so, you might be one of the following: a child of immigrant, a child of refugee, an international adoptee, a minority, or you attended an international school in your home country. For those who don't know, international schools are schools with education systems that are different from the local culture. And this is a very valid question. Let's call this group of people non-TCKs who relate to TCKs. So here's the question. Should we change the definition so that these non-TCKs who relate to TCKs also fall under the umbrella TCK? Well, if we were to group everyone under the term TCK, it will start to become difficult to do research because there are so many different types of experiences. Most importantly, it will definitely minimize someone's story if we group them all together. For example, someone who moved due to their parents' choice or sponsoring agency is very different from someone who grew up in a refugee camp. But if we were to create a special club for TCK and exclude those people, we would be making no effort to understand why there are non-TCKs who relate to TCKs. So the solution that Ruth Van Reken came up with in 2002 was to create a new terminology called cross-cultural kids. A cross-cultural kid is a person who is living or has lived in or meaningfully interacted with two or more cultural environments for a significant period of time during their first 18 years. Now that we have the term cross-cultural kid, we need to update the definition of third culture kid as well, or else everything will still be ambiguous and the lines are still blurry. As the world becomes more globalized, there are many reasons for a child to move to another country with their parents. In the third edition of Third Culture Kids, published in 2017, the TCK definition was updated. Let's take a look. A traditional third culture kid is a person who spends a significant part of his or her first 18 years of life accompanying parents into a country or countries that are different from at least one parent's passport country due to a parent's choice of work or advanced training. We can tell that this update acknowledges the fact that there are TCKs who come from many different types of social classes or economic situations, as it is not just people who have sponsored careers that we're talking about now. So as you can see, this definition helped clarify what developmental years mean and what the parent's culture refers to. While the authors have not given a clear time frame for what significant means, they wrote in the book that 2 weeks is probably not significant enough, neither is just a few months. So I think it's safe to assume that it should be a year or more. And one other thing to note is that it excludes children who come into a new culture not due to the parents' work or advanced training. The reason for this clarity is because the authors wanted TCKs to be strictly children of communities of those who work or do advanced training internationally, whether it be corporate, military, foreign service, NGOs, or even graduate students. Yes, according to these two definitions, a traditional TCK is also a CCK. Let's take a look at the cross-cultural kid model. Take some time to digest this. I know this is a lot to take in, but I still want to emphasize the fact that this model only shows some of the types of CCKs that we can consider. In particular, I want you to give out the definitions for domestic TCK, educational CCKs, children of borderlanders, and bi or multicultural children because they might not be intuitive to understand. Domestic TCKs are children whose parents have moved in or amongst various cultures or subcultures within that child's home country. Educational CCKs are children who attend a school with a different cultural base from the one they return to at home each night. Children of borderlanders are children who cross borders frequently, even daily, as they go to school, or whose parents work across national borders. Children from bi or multicultural or multi-ethnic parents are children born to parents from at least two cultures. They may or may not be of the same racial heritage. As you may expect, each of the CCKs depicted share the same cross-cultural background, but they each have very specific issues for their particular experience. While learning about these abstract concepts is fun, it can still feel unintuitive if we don't know how to apply these concepts to people in real life. Let's start by analyzing Jennie Kim. Jennie is a Korean singer, rapper, songwriter, model, and actress. She's best known as a member of the girl group Blackpink. In 2025, her debut studio album Ruby was released, featuring an all-English pop-hip-hop mix and collaborations with many other Western artists. So what does the childhood of such a successful global pop star look like? Let's take a look at some of the basic facts about Jennie. Jennie was born in South Korea. Her ethnicity is Korean. Her nationality is Korean. She speaks Korean and English fluently. She moved to New Zealand when she was 10 and stayed with a homestay family the whole time. The reason is because she said that she would like to live in New Zealand to her mom, and her mom agreed to it. When she was 14, she moved back to South Korea to become a K-pop trainee. So just based on this information, we can tell that she has had high agency as a kid because it was her decision to move to New Zealand and live separately from her family. And it was also her decision to become a K-pop trainee and move back to South Korea. She probably loved living in New Zealand because otherwise she wouldn't have stayed there for 5 years, but that's just my assumption. If you have seen the Netflix documentary on Blackpink, you would know that Jennie lived under very strict and limiting rules in the K-pop trainee system, which probably restricted their creative and artistic freedom. She mentioned that in New Zealand, everything was up to you, even if you're 10. You still have to make your own decisions. That was very important for me to have at a young age. I think it's safe to say that her experience in New Zealand really helped her understand some of the things that are important to her. And it also seems to me that her solo career, separate from Blackpink, was what really allowed her to explore her artistic creativity. And she really values that creative freedom and collaborating with Western artists. Jennie is very international, she's very global, and she understands Eastern culture and Western culture perfectly. So is she a TCK? My verdict on Jennie is that she is not a traditional TCK because she did not move to New Zealand due to her parents' work. It was her own decision and her mom supported it. She is for sure though a cross-culture kid, but she doesn't fit any of the categories that we've seen. She belongs in the others bubble. But what's interesting about Jennie's profile is that if we follow the 1999 definition, she would be considered a TCK. But the latest definition makes it clear that she is not. It's also unclear to me whether she struggles with her cultural identity because she never publicly mentioned it. But I do think that moving to another country at the age of 10 is very empowering for a kid since it's the kid's own decision, which is why if she doesn't struggle with the negative impacts of a high mobility life that a typical TCK has, it makes sense as the traditional TCKs move without a choice. But we can't say for sure unless she expresses it. What does a traditional TCK who struggled with his cultural identity look like then? Let's talk about Barack Obama. Obama has openly discussed his struggles of living in between worlds. In his memoir, Dreams from My Father, he wrote about how he wasted his life in high school. Drugs, he wrote, were a way he could push questions of who I was out of my mind, something that could flatten out the landscape of my heart, blur the edges of my memory. But why did he struggle so much? It wouldn't be hard to understand if we just took a look at the basic facts about his childhood. Obama was born in Hawaii. His father is ethnically Luo, which is an ethnic group in Kenya. His mother is white American. His nationality is American. His mom then remarried to an Indonesian man. His stepfather moved back to Indonesia to work as a geographer for the Indonesian government. After a year, Obama and his mother joined his stepfather to move to Indonesia. Obama was 6 years old at this time and he started attending local Indonesian schools. So as a kid, he was able to speak Indonesian fluently. At the same time, his mother homeschooled him English. When he was 10, he returned to Hawaii to live with his maternal grandparents and he attended an elite private school in Hawaii. He had only seen his biological father once in Hawaii when he was 10 before his father was killed in an accident. Based on this information, it's not hard to see why Obama struggled with his identity. He had to navigate his black and white American identities, navigate between American and Indonesian cultures, navigate going from a local Indonesian school to an elite private school in Hawaii. He no longer speaks Indonesian fluently, which means that he also lost that part of himself. He has to deal with his biracial identity, but his biological father wasn't there to support him. As you can probably tell, Obama is not just a traditional TCK. He's much more than that. He is also a multicultural CCK, a biracial CCK, an educational CCK, a minority, and perhaps even more. This level of cultural complexity meant that, most likely, no other human in this world has the same background as him. Therefore, it's difficult for him to feel understood by others. I'll be talking more about the challenges that a culturally complex TCK has to face in another video, but let's just leave it at that for now, because I feel like this video is already getting too long. Now, let's take a look at someone who has demonstrated a strong sense of cultural identity, despite being multicultural. Jackson Wang. Jackson is a singer and songwriter from Hong Kong. As a teen, he was a competitive fencer. He debuted in 2017 under the South Korean boy group GOT7. Later on, he founded the Chinese record label Team Wang. By 2021, he and other members of GOT7 left JYP Entertainment, their company, after their contracts expired. Since then, he has been working on his international activities as an artist. Jackson is interesting because he was born in Hong Kong, but he speaks Cantonese, English, Mandarin, and Korean fluently. And he's quote-unquote everywhere on the internet, promoting his album, conducting interviews in English all the time. People have also mistaken him as Asian American or Korean. For example, on a Korean show, this kid asked Jackson where he's from, and he said that he's from China. And the kid was like, "Are you sure?" And he was so stunned and he said yes in caps. But I think it's funny because ever since then, I feel like that's when he started introducing himself as Jackson Wang from China. In a 2020 interview with Forbes, Jackson said, "My goal is just to put my name out on the table, just to let everyone get to know me. I want to let people know that Chinese kids are working on good music too." So why does he have such a strong sense of Chinese cultural identity? Well, to simply put, he is just Chinese. Jackson was born and raised in Hong Kong. Growing up, he attended an American international school in Hong Kong. He is ethnically Han Chinese, and his father is from Hong Kong. His mother is from Shanghai. Growing up, he would travel between Hong Kong and Shanghai a lot, according to his latest interview at Wired. When he was 17, he decided to drop out of school to become a K-pop trainee, leaving his scholarship offer from Stanford behind. From this, we can tell that the reason that he gives off multicultural vibe, despite not having lived in another country in his childhood until he was 17, is because he is an educational CCK and he is multilingual. I think we could also argue that he's a bicultural CCK since his dad is from Hong Kong and his mom is from Shanghai, but the essential identity of being Chinese and being from China doesn't change. As an educational CCK, his main challenge as a kid would be having to navigate with the change of cultures that occurs daily. The American education system, classmates from all over the world, the Hong Kong local culture, and the Shanghainese culture in mainland China. This childhood experience actually makes him very international and culturally adaptable, but at the same time, he's also able to maintain a strong sense of identity and pride as a Chinese person. As an adult CCK, he's adept at befriending people from all over the world and is closely tied with the Chinese entertainment industry, the Korean entertainment industry, and the Western entertainment industry. And that is why he is not a TCK, but he has the traits of a TCK and the benefits that TCKs usually have. Another good example of someone who's great at taking advantage of their cross-cultural childhood is Christian Bale. The first thing that I personally learned about Christian Bale was that he is a very dedicated actor. He would go through drastic changes in his body within a short amount of time for filming a movie. In an interview, he said, "I don't want people to know too much about me. That leaves us as clean slates when it comes to playing characters." He is intentionally private due to his method acting philosophy, so it's hard to find information of his childhood, but here are some basic facts about his cross-cultural upbringing. Christian was born in Wales in the UK. During his childhood, he moved across the UK and Portugal. He said that he lived in 15 different towns before he turned 15. When he was 17, he moved to Los Angeles. The reason he moved around so much was because his mother was a circus performer and his father was a pilot, an environmental activist, and an entrepreneur. He is an example of a traditional TCK whose move was not sponsored by any agency, unlike the usual impressions of TCKs that we have, but it was still due to work. He never publicly expressed any struggles that came from such a high mobility childhood, but I think it's safe to assume that he had a lot of disrupted relationships because he kept on moving across different towns. So it's difficult to form like a long-term relationship, and he had to say goodbye to people all the time. He's a typical example of a social chameleon. He's able to switch between British and American accents, and you can see that as an actor, he's also a chameleon. Like, he literally shapeshifts between each movie. He aims to become the characters themselves. He is a traditional TCK under the other bubble. I don't think he is anything else, but I could have missed something. So I hope that looking at these people in real life and seeing how we can apply the concepts that we learned to people in real life really helped you understand what a TCK is and what a CCK is. While the primary focus of this video is on TCKs, since I'm trying to raise awareness on TCKs because I am a TCK myself, CCKs can also gain insights from TCKs research. So if you're interested in diving further into understanding the benefits and challenges of a multicultural childhood, I highly recommend you to read the book Third Culture Kids. And one final thing I want to note is that we have only looked at the successful TCKs and CCKs in this video, but not all adult TCKs thrive in life. In fact, many are suffering because of their TCK background. A lot of the challenges that they encounter cannot be solved easily because they are not validated by the people around them. Therefore, it's important for us to even just have this label of TCK so that TCKs are able to name their experience, because the TCK label help us make sense of our own identity and our own unique emotional experiences. TCK research is also used on mental health, education, cross-cultural psychology, and finally, having a TCK community will make an adult TCK feel less lonely. And that's why I hope that if you're a TCK watching this video, I hope you feel more understood. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Look at these. Are they geese? Isn't that crazy? Okay, thank you. Bye.